Hey, and I'm pleased to announce this major update to Server's embeddable policy decision points, or ePDPs, that allows you to do much more fine-grained policy filtering to allow your decision points to run directly on client devices, mobile applications, or even edge functions, or basically anywhere where you can't run a container or a binary. So let's quickly recap how these work. So with Server's Hub, you have your policies sitting inside of a policy store. Those policies are then brought in via our native GitHub connection or via your own CI pipeline, GitHub Actions, Circle CI, those kind of things. Those get brought into Server's Hub, and Server's Hub, we compile, test, and validate that for you. Now, at the end of that pipeline, if all the policies are good, we'll then go and distribute it, as we do today, to your existing policy decision points running on your server side, but we also then generate this embeddable PDP. Our embeddable PDP uses WebAssembly underneath, which allows you to run it in pretty much any environment, mobile apps, edge functions, on device, those kind of things. How this then works in your application, you have your application logic, your system, and that can then load an embeddable version of our runtime, our policy engine, directly onto that device. Then it goes and talks to your Serverless Hub instance to go and fetch the latest policies. What we've introduced with this release is the ability to actually filter and become much more targeted in which policies get shipped down to either the client device or the edge runtime where you may choose to run your policies. What this looks like is inside of your Serverless Hub account. When inside of your deployment, we now have a new embedded PDP rules section for a deployment where you can start building up different rules. And for example, here I've built up a browser app ePDP rule. So what we're doing here is we're actually filtering from the full set of policies down to a particular resource kind or even particular actions that we want to get compiled and pushed to the end device. This means we're keeping the policy bundle that gets shipped as small as possible because it's only containing the policies that are needed for that particular runtime environment. And also allows us to do much more fine-grained filtering. So we can actually target particular roles or versions or scopes. So if you're running a multi-tenant application, you can ship just the policies that are relevant for that particular tenant that that user is logged into at that moment in time down to the end client before doing the evaluation. For the edge runtime use case, we now also support authenticated pools of policies. So you may actually want your full sets of policies, but running inside of your edge runtime, Cloudflare Workers, or a Lambda at Edge, where you want to actually get the full policies, but we also want to make that secure so you can authenticate using your existing PDP client credentials to pull down an unfiltered bundle that gets loaded onto the device. And these rules you can expand upon. You can really target things like IP allow lists, you can target specific versions, you can actually require a scope to be passed in the request. So we always go and fetch the relevant scope at computation time for very different use cases. And we can build up further resource and action filters where we can build up rules which target particular resource kinds or actions before they're bundled. So to show you a very quick example, we have this sandbox environment. We have our JavaScript SDK running. We import our serverless ePDP runtime, our WASM. We then create a serverless client, and we're targeting a particular rule ID, which we've just saw configured in Hub. And then we've got some tracking, and then essentially we can start running checks. And currently, the view action is allowed, the edits are denied, and delete, and we can see the kind of the full log from the PDP that comes. But we can actually go and say, actually, I don't want the view action to be allowed. I'll go and remove that from the rule, save the rule, warning about it being public. And after about 10 seconds, when the bundle updates, we'll see this timestamp, which we expose for demo purposes, and that the new policy bundle is available. Then we go, run the checks again, boom, that seems has now changed. So what we are actually done here is we've applying the filter based on that new config and shipping it down to the client device. So there we're dynamically changing which policies are pulled onto the client through this workflow. The added benefit, just want to highlight before we finish, is that the runtime now also supports use cases beyond the basic check resource. You can now, for example, do the query plan function directly in the embeddable policy decision point for those edge function scenarios before you want to go and hit, example, a query, a serverless database, Neon, that kind of thing, where you want to do your authorization checks directly there without having to hit an external service first to do the checks. So as always, you can find out more about this on serverless.dev, as well as the extensive documentation of how to configure this in your environment. Looking forward to speaking to you more. Thanks.